Imagine standing at the edge of a quiet lake at night. The moonlight dances across the black water. The wind is still, almost too still. Then, without warning, you see bubbles rising from the surface. You lean in closer, heart pounding, and suddenly, something breaks the water. It isn't a fish, it isn't anything you've ever seen before. This isn't just a nightmare. This is Daggerland, Ohio. And Lake Erie has secrets that no one dares to speak about. Before we dive into this chilling story, I need you to do one thing. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next terrifying tale. And if you make it to the end, leave a comment with the word lake, so I know you were brave enough to hear the whole thing. Now, let's begin. George Lost grew up near the shores of Lake Erie. As a boy, he spent his summers fishing with his best friend, David Winters. They thought the lake was their playground. But one morning, when the fog was thick and the water smelled strangely metallic, they found something that would scar them forever. George pulled up his fishing line and froze. At the end of his hook dangled a fish, but it wasn't whole. Its skin was shredded like something with teeth had torn into it. But the teeth marks weren't right. Too wide, too jagged, and deep. As if the predator had more strength than anything that should exist in the lake. David bent closer, his young eyes wide. What could do that? He whispered. Neither of them had an answer. They tossed the fish back into the water, hoping to forget. But the image never left their minds. Years passed. The boys grew into men. David became the sheriff of Daggerland, and George became a lake patrol officer. Life moved on, at least it pretended to. But the lake, it never forgot. Strange things started happening in the town. People disappeared without explanation. Families searching for loved ones only found abandoned boats drifting aimlessly. Dogs barked wildly at the shoreline, refusing to go near the water. At night, locals swore they heard splashing, followed by screams that carried across the waves. Sheriff David tried to explain it logically. Accidents, bad storms, drunken fishermen falling overboard. But George, who spent his nights patrolling those waters, knew better. He saw things. Shadows, moving under the boat when no current stirred. Dark shapes rising and sinking just out of reach of his flashlight. And sometimes, eyes. Pale, glowing eyes staring up from beneath the surface. Do you feel that chill? Because we're only getting started. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's your chance. Hit that button and stay with me. This story goes much darker. One evening, George was patrolling near the deepest part of the lake. His spotlight cut across the water, and that's when he saw it. A boat, empty, drifting silently. He climbed aboard, heart racing, and found a half-eaten sandwich, a pack of cigarettes, and fresh fishing gear. The owner couldn't have been gone more than minutes, but where was he? George scanned the water, and then he heard it, a soft splash behind him. He turned, but there was nothing. The lake was calm. Too calm. He called out the man's name. No answer. Then came the bubbles. Dozens of them rising fast as if something massive was moving beneath him. And then, silence. George reported it to Sheriff David, but David had already been digging into old records. What he found was terrifying. Daggerland had always been cursed. The earliest records from the 1800s spoke of travelers vanishing near the shore. Native stories, even older than that, whispered of a being that lived in Lake Erie. Not a fish, not a monster in the usual sense. Something older, something that fed when the lake was still and the moon was high. A creature that dragged the living below, leaving nothing behind. David traced disappearances across the decades, and every 20 or 30 years the cycle repeated. Fishermen, boaters, even whole families gone without a trace. Always in the same stretch of the lake, always with no explanation. The sheriff wanted to warn the town, but how do you tell people that a nightmare lives in their lake? That it isn't just water they're swimming in, it's a hunting ground. The fear grew worse when a teenage boy vanished while swimming one summer night. His friends claimed they saw something pull him under, long pale arms wrapped around his legs. They swore it wasn't human. The town panicked. No one went near the lake after sunset. Even in daylight, people stayed away from the shore. Boats sat empty, Docks grew rotten, and silence settled over the once busy town. George and David became obsessed. George patrolled endlessly, while David buried himself in books, records, and old letters. Together, they started to realize the truth. This wasn't a random creature. This was something that had always been there, hiding, feeding, waiting. And now, it was hungry again. George once described his closest encounter. He was on patrol, midnight, fog so thick he couldn't see more than a few feet. His boat rocked gently, and suddenly the water beside him bulged. Something enormous pressed up from beneath, almost capsizing him. He grabbed his spotlight and aimed it down. For a second, just one horrifying second, he saw it. A face. Not human, not animal. Pale skin stretched tight over bones. Black holes where a nose should be. A wide, lipless mouth, lined with rows of sharp, jagged teeth. And those eyes. White, glowing, unblinking. Then it sank. The water closed again, calm as if nothing had been there. George couldn't breathe. He swore he heard something whisper his name from beneath the surface before he sped back to shore, never daring to look. Behind him, Sheriff David told George they had to warn the town. But George knew the truth. Warnings wouldn't help. Once the lake chose you, there was no escape. And maybe that's why Daggerland remains a town of silence. Outsiders never hear the real stories. Tourists come and go. But the locals know. They keep their distance from the water. They don't fish at night, they don't swim alone, and when they hear splashing in the dark, they close their windows and pray, because they know what lives in Lake Erie, and it is waiting. Now tell me, if you found yourself at the edge of that lake at midnight, and you heard something rise from beneath the water, would you run or would you stay frozen in fear? Leave your answer in the comments. I want to know who among you is truly fearless. And if you haven't already, subscribe right now so you never miss another terrifying story like this. Because what you just heard is only one of many hidden nightmares that haunt small towns like Daggerland. Until next time, sleep with one eye open.